Welcome back. With this short video, I think what I'll do is just complete chapter 1, because this first part, which is on method and determinism, I don't always use this. It depends on the quality of the class, the size of the class. This is a little bit difficult. It's a little tricky, and it requires maybe more attention. The material is important and it deserves attention, but it requires more time, I think, than sometimes I have available in a short semester or a short quarter of class. But use it. Economic determinism is Karl Marx. It's one of the most influential methods, although it's been largely out of fashion, I would say, but also out of use for some time, not just since 1989, but more recently, I think it's kind of fallen out of fashion. But it's still, the terms still are very influential. Marx and Freud and some of these people who have been kind of discredited in the 21st century, like their work has been discredited by people in those fields, are still enormously influential. And so I think it's good to do this. This Great Men in Battles is very interesting because it's a method that many young people will see. Well, many Americans, Canadians, Europeans also will see and hear in sort of nationalist narratives, in History Channel narratives, in kind of the grand histories of our people and so on. These great men in battles, and I think it's helpful to know what that is, and to know that that one needs to be cautious about this. And Edward Creasy's book, I have to say, is beautifully written, and I love reading it. It's kind of inspirational about the great battles in history. He's a great 19th century writer, kind of romantic, nationalist, English. But that doesn't make it sound history in the 21st century. It's kind of not, and it's kind of lost its authority with the advent of more recent social histories and democratic histories that include, I think, much more realistically many groups in society, and don't just ignore those groups that were disenfranchised and continue to disenfranchise those people by excluding them from the historical narrative, which obviously in a world history nobody could rightfully be excluded from a world history narrative. So Project 4 on page 27 asks what inherent weaknesses. This is a kind of a complex question, and a person could take the time to discuss determinisms, and that determinisms mean basically that what happened was inevitable to have happened. It's kind of a philosophical question, and it's a little bit tricky, but it's an interesting discussion to have if you have the time. Then genre is really just a kind of a factual overview of the varieties of history. One reason that I really love the discipline of history is that history can study and discuss and examine and enjoy or hate any aspect of human activity, including wars and battles and great men. It can all of those things, but also the history of honey and the history of agriculture and the history of particular technologies and the history of women and the history of a people and the history of migrations. And I mean, the history of humor, historians can study almost any aspect of human activity and stay within their discipline. So these are all different genres, and I think it's important to say students will sometimes come out of high school or out of community college or something like that with an idea of what history is, and then they'll say, well, this is history, that's not history, this is real history, that's not real history. But it's probably all history. What isn't history then? This project, which is the last project of the chapter on page 31, this kind of reflects back to the project with the two tables, the two columns. And I think as I go through these, I will refer to this, although it is Project 3 Part B, rather than refer to it as Project 3 Part B, I'll refer to it as the argument and assertion, or historical and unhistorical project, the project with the two columns. This is partly what this is asking about. This project is justice dependent on critical thinking. It's combining that with this earlier questions about the Torah and Hammurabi and so on. If justice doesn't use critical thinking, then it doesn't seem to me that it's justice at all. Then it would be subjective. Is there a way to establish and to practice law that's objective? And I think there is. I think there has to be. If there isn't, then democracy is a sham, really, and justice is a sham. Because if justice does not use critical thinking, then justice would use, what else would it use? It would use subjective belief, assertion, absence of evidence. I'm not sure. So I think this is an important question, because justice is a very broad term. It can apply to the grading method. It can apply to what the teacher asks of the student. It can apply to why does the police pull somebody over on the highway. It can apply to it can apply to family life. It can apply to all kinds of social circumstances where there are opportunities for justice and injustice. And I think that those opportunities occur in people's daily lives in small ways and in great ways. And for people to to build a society that's based on justice, they need to have a society that's based on critical thinking. And that's the same as a professional society. A society that's based on law, that's based on science, that's based on objectivity, and justice becomes blind in that way. And blind justice means justice that is not subjective. Justice that doesn't see color, it doesn't see gender, it doesn't see class, it doesn't see wealth, it doesn't see what we like and what we don't like. It sees the objective criteria. So in this way, it's a little bit tricky for people, because people want justice sometimes to be sentimental, particularly I think young American people. Not only, but I think this is a particular kind of aspect of American culture, that justice should be compassionate, which means sentimental. But I don't know if that's true. I think compassionate means follow the law. That the law should be compassionate in that the law is just, it's fair, it's equal, and it's applied equally. That seems to me to be compassionate. So there's a lot of ways to take this Project 5, a lot of different directions that both students and instructors, professors and teachers, and parents, if you're a parent using this book, could take this project. But I think it's open to really a wonderful discussion and a powerful discussion that stays with people. I find that people take this question seriously, particularly when the question is applied to your life. When the judge rules in your case, when you're taxed, when the teacher grades you, when we have a set of rules for you to follow at work, and so on. Are these just? Are these fair? And how do you know they're just and fair? Is that something that you can measure? And the answer is, it probably is something you can measure. Again, there will be some dispute and some debate about this gray area between correct and incorrect and right and wrong in some cases. In other cases, it'll be, I think, a very clear line. But this is really a rich question, and I think it's a really valuable question to discuss. Maybe there's not an absolute answer in the end, although I'm pretty confident that the answer is yes, justice does require critical thinking, and I think that can be argued. Okay, enjoy that project.